So we just created a impact business model around that. And there's certain steps that you need to go through in order to do that, and certain documentation you need to provide. However, it's been really helpful for the business. And also, I can't deny we jumped up 68 points in our B Corp certification. By adopting all of those things, we actually made a huge jump in our certification points, which was, that doesn't hurt, that's for sure.
Hello, and welcome to the EcoSend podcast, a weekly podcast on becoming a climate-conscious business. Every week, we'll be interviewing founders, marketers, and leaders who are championing the climate. The podcast is hosted by myself, James Gill, co-founder and CEO of Go Squared, and the makers of EcoSend. If you run a business or are responsible for growing one, and you want to have a positive impact on the environment, then listen on. Every episode, our goal is for you to learn something and be inspired to take some action. Every single one of us making small changes and some large changes will add up. We're all in this together. So let's get on with the show. Thanks so much for listening. Now let's meet today's guest. Hi there, welcome to another episode of the EcoSend podcast. I'm your host, James Gill, and I'm thrilled to be joined by an absolutely incredible guest today. He's called Tim Frick from Mightybytes. And Tim, well, where do I start? Tim is the founder and president of Mightybytes, which is a digital agency and a certified B Corp. One of the earliest B Corps that I'm aware of. They're located in Chicago. But Tim is not just the founder and president of a great agency. He's also a speaker, community organizer, and the author of not one, not two, not three, but 4 books, including the very book on digital sustainability, Designing for Sustainability, which is published by O'Reilly Media. Tim, I am so excited to have you on the show. Welcome. How are you doing today?
Thanks for having me, James. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to our conversation. I'm doing great.
Jolly good. I that's fantastic to hear. So Tim, how's things going at Mightybytes? Tell me more about Mightybytes. I know we've spoken a little bit, but for those who haven't come across Mightybytes before, they may be the first time hearing about it. What do you do at Mightybytes?
Sure. Mightybytes is a digital agency. We were started in 1998, and we help purpose-driven organizations find success using the internet. And that has meant different things over the 25 years that we've been in business. But usually, it's kind of helping clients find, long-term sustainable marketing ops. So we build websites, we help, run marketing campaigns, measurement and analytics, that kind of stuff. It's common things that many digital agencies do. We have the advantage of having done them for many, many years. So I think we're pretty good at it. And for the past 10, we've really been folding sustainability principles into all of that, like into the design, the development, the marketing, the content, all of that kind of stuff. I think that really is what differentiates us from a lot of agencies.
Absolutely. I guess before we go too much further, I guess there's so many pathways we could take on today's show, because I'm fascinated by, it's rare that I speak to another person that's been running a business for such a long time, since before the year 2000. Like, that is an incredible achievement. To be building a business that has such great values, to be going through the B Corp process at such an early stage. I think, it's a great thing now that B Corp is relatively a well-known thing, but when you did it and originally did it, I guess not many people knew about it.
We were the ninth B Corp in Illinois. So we were number 9 in Illinois, and I think number 435 worldwide. So it was still, it was 4 years into the movement, but it was still pretty early on for sure.
That is very, very early in my eyes. Yeah. I guess on today's show, we could also, there's a whole load we could talk about around the sustainability guidelines as well, which I really want to make sure we have time for. But I guess maybe to start with, Tim, like your journey into sustainability and, clearly having these extremely well-defined values now, like, where did that start and how did that come about? I take it you didn't just wake up one day and decide.
No, I I didn't. In fact, I was actually on a completely different career track in filmmaking and news production and stuff like that. And then the internet happened, and I seemed to really take to it really well. And also at the time, the 90s were a mad dash for everyone to get on the internet, and everybody was funding whatever silly idea they could possibly fund. And what I saw was that lots of purpose-driven organizations, lots of nonprofits, social enterprises, we didn't really call them that at the time, but I mean, organizations that are really truly trying to make a big difference in the world were getting left behind in that. They weren't getting the funding, they didn't have the skills, they didn't, and so I really started Mightybytes wanting to help them and help organizations like them get their skills up to speed and make sure that they could use, I found the new medium of the internet very exciting. And so I wanted to make sure that I could help organizations do the same and use it to drive success. And so that's really the kind of impetus behind starting Mightybytes. It came out of the ashes of another agency where I had a business partner, but that process helped me kind of decide, what the true thing that I wanted to do was, and that was to help, really good purpose-driven organizations. And of course, in that past 25 years, that has changed a lot. We now have social enterprises, we have B Corps, so it wasn't just nonprofits we're working with. We're working, across the board and across sectors. But at the time, it was, still heady times for the internet, and not a lot of it was really well defined, and so it felt very much like wild west pioneer days.
Absolutely,
to use a horribly colonial term.
Absolutely, though. But I think these days, like, we're in the year, what are we in, 2023, and it's so easy to just sort of take so much of the current state of the world for granted in terms of how big of a thing the web is today, how much of the scaffolding and infrastructure that exists, but for you to be doing this in the late 90s is incredibly ahead of the general consensus. I guess there was still probably a lot of fear around what does the internet mean, uncertainty about whether it's even going to be a big deal.
And there were all kinds of economic ups and downs. I mean, we've weathered, the financial crisis of the tech bubble of the early 2000s, financial crisis of 2008. COVID. We've kind of done like this, over the course of 25 years. Feast and famine type thing. And so we've learned, and I think this is a really important skill for anybody who wants to be climate resilient, is to embrace that idea of continuous improvement and resilience. Nothing is going to go as planned. What do they say? Volatility, uncertainty. I can't remember. The acronym is VUCA. But I mean, nothing goes as planned. And so making sure that you're able to kind of be agile and roll with the punches and kind of be resilient in the face of adversity is really the only reason we're still here 25 years later, honestly. I mean,
absolutely.
That's been the main thing. It's like, all right, well, this thing that we didn't expect was going to happen has happened, and so how do we adjust or pivot or change our approach based on that? And I will say, we became a certified B Corp in 2011, so that was about 13, 14 years into the business, and we, that was really probably one of the smartest moves that we could make in terms of, company resilience, just because it helped us get the governance structure in place. It helped us, figure out where we wanted to go with all of these kind of constantly changing dynamics of business, and we wanted to make sure that we were staying true to our values, and so it really was a great roadmap for building a better business, and we've been using that, like I said, since 2011 to continually do that, and continuous improvement is really the name of the game. And that's also truthfully where all of the digital sustainability stuff came out of, because we went through the B Corp certification for the first time, and we're like, all right, well, we thought we were a good environmentally friendly business. We as I'm sure you're going through the assessment, you understand too. You go through that B Corp assessment thinking you're doing a lot of really great stuff, and then it opens up your eyes to all this other stuff you could be potentially doing. And that was really a big eye opener for me. And at the same time, reports were starting to come out about the environmental impact of the internet, and we were like, well, we build websites for a living, and we work on the internet for a living, and so what does that mean to us? The B impact assessment at the time didn't have anything about like digital sustainability. There was nothing related to that. And so we really wanted to dig in and roll our sleeves up and figure out like, okay, if I build the internet for a living, what is it that my business can do to do that better? And be more sustainable about it, more equitable about it, more regenerative about the whole approach. And that kind of set us off on a journey that's been going on for, more than 10 years now.
Yeah, and to put it lightly, it's not just a journey. It's like you've become somewhat of one of the most vocal people for digital sustainability, right? Like
for sure. Yeah.
And I know that as I mentioned, like you've had the multiple books about the topic, but to be published with O'Reilly, that's a huge honor, I guess, and huge. Well, I mean, it puts you in a Hall of Fame, I think.
I don't know about
but to it clearly you've not just ticked the boxes of B Corp to get to where you are. Like you've held these values up very highly and done a lot to encourage and inspire other people to follow those same
for sure.
Same values.
I hope so, at least, and I'd like to believe. I'm pretty sure that's when. That's what B Lab, the organization that certifies B Corps, that's what they want people to do with this assessment. They want people to use it as a creativity tool, as a productivity tool, as a tool to basically design what a better business looks like based on your unique situation and your unique needs. Every business is different. Every business has its different kind of stakeholders, and so this is a tool to help you figure out what that means for you. And on top of it all, you can figure out what that means for you, but you also have this huge community around the globe of companies that have also faced similar challenges and are more than happy to say, hey, I'll help. Here's what we learned from this process, or here's what we learned from this process. Here's a template we use to do this thing. And that, I think, to me, has been one of the most meaningful and exciting things about the B Corp movement, especially as it's grown, is that everybody's really open and caring and willing to help and willing to share. It's been a very, very amazing experience from a collaboration perspective.
It's incredible to hear. I guess, was there ever a point where you were not sure that B Corp would, like, going through the B Corp process would help? Was there ever any questions in your mind that, like, oh gosh, this is a lot of change, there's a lot of things to change in the business? Like
a few things, yeah, absolutely. Right at the beginning, we finished the certification and we were like, now what? And I think, that's a pretty common thing for any B Corp to go through. Like you go through this big slog of filling out all of this paperwork and documenting all these things and making sure that everything is, all your T's are crossed and I's dotted. And then you're like, okay, well, now what? And of course, B Lab wants you to start weaving that into your daily processes, but not every B Corp does that overnight. And for us, it took several years, and to be honest, a turnover of much of our staff, because the company's values, my values, and the team's values were not all aligned. And it took us a while to kind of figure out and get our sea legs and balance that out, and also figure out, it was very easy to people get excited about this because they want to make a difference and they want to create impact and stuff like that. And so it's very easy for organizations to be like, yes, we're going to do this and this and this and this and this and this, and then completely overextend themselves. And, we were definitely guilty of that. It's really about good governance. So at the end of the day, making sure that you're using those guidelines to apply to your day-to-day business practices. And it took, like I said, it took us, and I think it takes a lot of B Corps a while to get their stride, to catch their stride on that. I think for us, the real pinnacle shift came, it's been a lot of ongoing, continuous improvement, as I said, is the name of the game. So it's a lot of ongoing changes, but the biggest thing for me, at least more recently, was when we certified for the 5th time in 2021, we really honed in on impact business models. And so we really focused on, okay, how can we, it's not just about like we make money over here and then we donate over here. I mean, a lot of companies do that. We're a 1% for the Planet member. We do that too. However, true impact is really about like, how can we actually run our business and create impact at the same time? What can you do to make sure that your business is creating the best positive social and environmental impact it can? And the secret for that is, for us at least, is an impact business model. So part of that certification, we created an impact business model for accessibility, so that basically we're accessible by default. Every project that we take on, we prioritize digital accessibility so that people with disabilities don't run into barriers when they're accessing content and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So we created a business model around that. So if you hire Mightybytes, you're guaranteed to get a level of accessibility with every project that we run. We also did a similar thing for sustainability, where we just decided we needed to be green by default. So you get green hosting, you get efficient code, you get all of the trappings that come with sustainable web design. And then the third one was education. We do a lot of blogging, a lot of speaking, books, obviously, a lot of educational components to our business. We give a ton of workshops and stuff. And so we wanted to make sure that those workshops were aligned with our values as a B Corp. And so we just created a impact business model around that. And there's certain steps that you need to go through in order to do that, and certain documentation you need to provide. However, it was it's been really helpful for the business. And also, I can't deny, we jumped up 68 points in our B Corp certification. By adopting all of those things, we actually made a huge jump in our certification points, which was, that doesn't hurt, that's for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, you made it almost seem almost easy that you said just there. I mean, just did. But I think that it's so interesting hearing you talk about it though, Tim, because I think so many of these aspects, like I know from like the working with other people working in the world of the web and building web products, sometimes it's so easy to not do the accessible stuff, or to not care about the sustainability side. We've got priorities, we've got to make more money than we spend, and we've got to get this project done. And those things are so often the things that get pushed aside. And I guess to put them at to document them and make them part of your ethos, it's just such almost like a hack to ensure that they happen.
For sure,
I love that.
I would say tech companies and the internet at large is very good at externalizing impact, and making sure that you don't see, we add plugins to our websites. We do all these things. Accessibility should be a thing that's done by default. It should be turned on and implemented in processes for everybody who builds or owns or manages a website. But it's not, and it's externalized in ways that ends up making 90. I think Ahrefs. No, not Ahrefs. One of I can't remember the name, which company it was, but they did a study on accessibility this year and basically found that 96% of the pages that they tested during the study would fail simple accessibility challenges.
Wow.
So, if you think about that as an kind of basically a part of the web, or I can't, the word I'm looking for is escaping, but it's a sample of the web overall, and 96% of organizations are failing that. Then that's just. I mean, the only way is up. Honestly, I mean, sadly,
I hope so.
It's horrible, and most organizations. And many of the clients that we run across, and many people we run across, even in purpose-driven organizations, other B Corps, nonprofits, et cetera, are just completely unaware of it. They'll look at something like Accessibility, and I hate to call out a company by name, but there are these layover tools that are cheap and easy, and you throw them on your website and instant accessibility, and that's not actually the case. I mean, there's a lot of challenges with those kinds of tools. And so, it shouldn't be an add-on. It should be built into the processes that you have. And we're hoping with these guidelines, especially that we're going to talk about in a bit, that we can do the same for accessibility, sustainability, that sustainability becomes the default. It's just how people build websites. Accessibility is just how people design websites.
Absolutely. And I was going to say, it sort of shows the how the priorities, I guess, of a lot of businesses on the web have changed over the years. Because if you look at the standards, or like HTML as a standard, not to get, I know there are many listeners who may be worried this is getting too codey, but you look at HTML, if you just build a website in HTML, it is by itself, by inherently, like, everything should be accessible from there. But it's now that we got to this point where there's, often you build a website, you're so far removed from
for sure
original, like, actual source code HTML and
Absolutely.
those standards that have been carefully
we layer on all these third-party services, and every single one of those third-party services has an impact. And it's hard for you to say, are their priorities the same as mine? It's easy to add a plugin to WordPress, but if that WordPress plugin isn't accessible, it isn't, it doesn't care about sustainability, if it doesn't care about some of these issues, you're going to run into a number of problems. And most people, because that's externalized and not part of the stuff that's in front of them right away, don't even think that should be part of their organization's sustainability efforts, for instance. And again, that was exactly why we created these web sustainability guidelines through the W3C, because we wanted to make sure that digital sustainability was aligned with reporting standards. I mean, that's, right now you've got sustainability professionals who aren't doing digital, you've got digital professionals who aren't doing sustainability, and there's this huge gap between them. And so digital sustainability isn't often included in sustainability reporting. The digital products and services usually are not included, or if they are, it's only one small component of it. And so the guidelines that we created with the W3C were meant to specifically address that.
Yeah. So I guess, many people listening to this might be in the world of maybe responsible for websites, maybe responsible for email marketing. They're many marketers listen to the EcoSend podcast, and I guess a lot of the things you read all the time are about increasing conversion rates and making a higher performing website for how to make sure people don't bounce off the page. But I guess a lot of people are not necessarily web developers and don't necessarily think about the lower level stuff. So maybe just from your words, Tim, like, digital sustainability itself, we've been talking about it a bit, but like, I guess there's some relationship to accessibility as well. But like, what is digital sustainability in your eyes?
Sure. Yeah. Maybe I should have defined that up front, but
no, don't worry.
We define it as applying social and environmental and economic stewardship practices to the process of digital product services and data delivered via the internet. And that's a pretty common definition. I believe Whole Grain Digital uses something similar. I know you've had Tom on your podcast before.
We love Whole Grain. Wonderful.
Likewise. But essentially, it's applying sustainability principles to your digital products and services. So that includes your marketing, that includes your website, that includes third-party services you use. So like, a lot of marketers use SEMrush, and they use Moz, and they use all of these third-party tools, and you're actually responsible for the data that you create and manage on those platforms, and you're also responsible for the impact. So things like accessibility, data privacy, sustainability in terms of actual emissions impact and stuff like that. Organizations are actually responsible for that. Sure, it's Moz's responsibility or SEMrush's responsibility to host their servers powered by renewable energy and make sure that their products are as accessible as possible. But the users of those products, also have a responsibility there as well, because you are creating impact with that stuff. And so, as marketers, we definitely use a lot of those products and don't really even think about the data we create. And the sad thing is that 90% of all the data marketers collect usually goes unused or and so what's happening is we've got these thousands of data centers around the world, and they're just filling up with data. And the answer, the company's answer is not necessarily to tell people to go in and clean up their data. It's to build another data center. And so we're building virtual landfills so that we can house marketing data. And that's, I don't know. I mean, that doesn't sit right with me, especially when a little bit of good stewardship, could actually go a long way into helping you, even if an organization creates like data disposal strategy and says, you know what, we're going to go through once a quarter and we're going to clean out our marketing data and get rid of the stuff that we don't use, that we don't care about. We're going to focus on quality over quantity. That would go a long way to just, helping marketers be more, positive in the impact that they create.
It's such a vivid sort of image there that we're chucking data into landfills essentially. Right. It's arguably even more impactful than a landfill because it's needing active electricity, cooling, all of these things.
All that stuff. Yeah.
It's also so interesting that the idea of sort of cleaning up data and not storing so much. It's also something that goes hand in hand with some of the other good practices you already spoke about with regards to privacy and there's an environmental side, but there's a sort of the social side, the responsibility side, the moral side, maybe we're for so long, I guess, on the web, businesses were like, let's just hoard all the data and it'll have some value someday if we can mine it. And now it's like, actually, I think hopefully starting to swing back in a different direction.
Yeah, I would like to think so. I'd like to think that, ethics and responsibility are going to, end up playing a bigger role as we move forward on all of this. And then I think at the end of the day, it really is going to come down to legislation, which was, again, another reason why we worked on the web sustainability guidelines. Climate change is going to literally shift everything about business. Every business is going to need to be more resilient. Every business is going to need to start reporting their emissions and their impact and all kinds of things in their businesses that they're not doing right now. And this, when I say businesses, I also mean nonprofits, government sector, et cetera, organizations overall. Why not get ahead of the curve and start reporting on that stuff already? Why not, roll your sleeves up and do the work now so that when it comes down to the point of, the mandatory disclosure legislation, which, has already been introduced in the United States, and I'm sure multiple places across Europe, that is not a huge hurdle for your organization. We have client organizations who look at that and they're like completely gobsmacked over what is it that I can even do regarding this stuff. So, my take is, you might as well start small, identify where you're at right now, look at the low hanging fruit and start to kind of make some process and progress against this stuff, because at the end of the day, it's going to happen anyway, whether that's tomorrow or 10 years from now. I hope it's not 10 years from now, because the climate crisis really can't wait.
Yeah, we need to be doing everything we can today, don't we?
Right.
Yeah. I guess in terms of today, or maybe tomorrow, there are some guidelines coming to the web, Tim. You've been, but I know you've been working very hard on these, and I don't know, maybe just zooming out again, just to clarify, because I think I'm pretty geeky, but I didn't realize necessarily at the depth that the web and everything we use is built on technologies that are basically standards that are everyone, whether you're a website builder or a maker of tools for the web or maker of browsers, there are standards that people agree on, and these are put together by very hardworking people, often voluntarily.
Right.
And you are one of these people, right, Tim? And you've been working on some standards with some other very smart people.
Yeah, and I should clarify, they're just guidelines currently, not standards, and they're in their first draft. So I'll go back a little bit, and as I mentioned earlier, we went on this journey of figuring out what digital sustainability meant for us as a B Corp, and we're trying to figure out how to essentially shift what we do as well as the industry that we're in, for the better. And we realized really early on that we needed education and awareness around this stuff. Mightybytes created a tool called EcoGrader that helps people understand the environmental impact of their websites and stuff like that. However, that's not nearly enough. Yeah, I mean, we're biased. We like EcoGrader, but
we will definitely link to that in the notes, because
sure.
It's a very interesting tool to try out. Yeah,
it's but the guidelines are really where change is going to happen, because the education and awareness still is hugely needed, and people need to understand, they need guidelines for this kind of stuff. And so, I started the Sustainable Web Design Community Group at the World Wide Web Consortium. So the W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium, is has basically been the kind of go-to standard for digital accessibility for 20 plus years now. And so we thought, well, a community group within the W3C, getting people to talk about this stuff could be a good first step towards helping people understand it on a much more broader level, and then moving towards standards. And so we started that in 2013, and it kind of just sat there, and people trickled in and shared some resources and trickled back out again. And then the global pandemic happened, and everybody went online, and everybody started working in front of their computers every day, all day, and awareness around the environmental impact of the internet started to really grow. And so did our group. And so, we were starting to get all kinds of different people joining the group: researchers, designers, developers, business leaders. All these people were joining the group, and everybody's kind of agreeing that there should be a set of standards or recommendations that people can follow to go through this. And so, once we finally got enough people in the group, we were like, well, let's start meeting and talking about this and figuring out what we can do. So for the past 2 years, we've been having an open meeting the last Wednesday of every month, with the idea of creating these guidelines and putting them out in the world to help people better understand digital sustainability and what it means for their organization. The guidelines itself, the ones that we're actually officially launching tomorrow. We're recording this on September 12th, so on the 13th we're launching that. And they're in 93 guidelines, 250 pages worth of guidelines, and
wow.
4 different categories, with a 5th kind of spread across all of them. So the categories are user experience design, business and product strategy, hosting and infrastructure, and wow, I'm just totally braining on the web development.
I'm not testing it, Tim.
Yeah, no. I know. It's like you'd think this would be like the back of my hand by this point. And web development was one of the first ones done. It's one of the most robust set of guidelines. So you'd think I would have thought of that first. But anyway, regardless, there were about 50 of us that collaborated on these on a pretty regular basis. Each committee had chairs, and those chairs were responsible for basically inviting collaborators, inviting industry experts to, collaborate on essentially what at the time was a set of Google Docs, and basically put information. And we had a structure that we use for all of the guidelines. So every guideline has, cited resources and benefits and, essentially impact and effort ratings and all the things that you could need to say, here's how I might implement this within my own organization. And so we pulled all of those together over the past couple of years and put them in W3C's guidelines format. We finished that last week, and right now W3C is having their annual global conference in Seville. And so a couple of us are going to be joining virtually, and then one of our committee chairs is actually going to present in person there.
That's incredible. So I guess it's so valuable, though, because it's a resource that anyone can use. And, unlike maybe someone writing even a very educational resource on a blog, like there's agreement, there's been discussion, there's been debate, and it's on a site. The site is not trying to do any lead capture or drive you down a funnel. It's like, this is an educational resource that has been kind of reviewed and worked on for literally like a decade, right?
I mean, we have definitely been sharing resources for a decade now. The hardcore work really has been over the last year and a half or so. Year and a half to 2 years, we've been really, pulling together everything and getting it into a format that works. That being said, the format it's in right now is kind of a dry document format. We do intend to migrate them over to sustainablewebdesign.org so that they can be indexed and searchable and tagged and categorized, and so people can basically work their own way through the journey, whether that's if you're a user experience designer or a business leader, you can kind of chart your own course through figuring out what those are. So we're working on that right now since the first draft of the guidelines are done.
Well, thank you, Tim, and all of the people that have been working on that. That is very, very, very cool, and looking forward to seeing it launch, and we'll make sure that's linked to in the notes. Yeah. Tim, the time has flown by, but I know we always like to talk one last thing on like the future. I didn't know if you wanted to touch on any sort of thoughts you had on the future. I'm not asking you to predict the future and place money on it, but did you have any thoughts on how things are going to evolve over the coming years? Either maybe on the web, especially with digital sustainability.
I want to be hopeful. I want to recapture the excitement that I felt in the 90s when the web was brewing and taking off, and you know, everyone was so excited about what the promise of what it could bring to society, the barriers it could break down, all of that kind of stuff. And I'm not going to lie, over the last decade, I felt kind of skeezy. I'm like, this is kind of, this is not going in the right direction. This is not good. And the list of things and problems that we've seen, especially over the last decade, is very, very long. So I want to be hopeful in that. Things like these guidelines and the congregation of people around ethics and responsibility, privacy, accessibility, all these things. I want to believe that we're going to, more people are going to join the cause, and more people are going to, essentially apply what I like to think of as B Corp values to the internet overall.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's a fantastic note to be wrapping up the show on, Tim. And I think I hope I speak for a lot of people in saying thank you for putting in so much hard work and setting such an incredible example. Like, it's honestly inspired us with the work we're doing on EcoSend. And I know we follow your blog a lot for lots of inspiration and tips and how to very practically make changes.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
It's thank you, and thank you for giving us a wonderful episode. I'm sure there are many people listening or watching that would love to hear more, so I guess mightybytes.com is the site for both the agency, and also the blog is on there too. But also, if people want to speak to you, Tim, you're on LinkedIn, right? And we'll
probably
link
the easiest way to find me there. Or you
Awesome.
can just Google me too.
Oh, yeah, could do that.
Turns out.
That's a good idea. Tim, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it, James.
Cheers, Tim. And thank you to everyone for listening or watching. If you've enjoyed the show today, please do let us know, either by dropping us a comment or leaving a review. It really helps us spread the word about wonderful people like Tim. And we hope to see you again soon. So catch you next time.
Thanks,
Cheers.
James.